that did start the program with me as a Knick fan pounding my chest. Chris Brockman, I've never met our next guest, but I'm imagining he feels the same way as you do right now.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, somebody who was born in Everett, Mass.
Yes.
And played high school in Everett, Mass. Went to Brown and then taught tight ends or coached tight ends at Amherst College.
Oh, yeah.
I have a feeling could be a Celtic fan.
I think we're cut from
Just
the same
throwing it
cloth.
out there. He's the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. He's Mike Borgonzi here on the program. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing good, Rich. How you doing?
Did I nail that one? Did I nail that pick, Mike? Or no?
You did. Last couple of games there have been tough for the C's. But
Okay.
we've been known to come back versus those New York teams, so there's still hope.
Yeah, and I heard it too. I mean, what's with general managers in Boston? You got like a Gettleman accent going on here, Mike. I mean, like it sounds like that's what happens in the NFL. I don't know.
I haven't lost it yet. Still have the 617 number and still haven't lost the action.
Nice.
My man.
Hey, man, I got the 917. You could take the kid out of the 917, but never the other way around.
Yeah, I'm still 207, which is Maine.
There you go.
So.
See, you guys.
Yeah, we're good.
Guys here.
There's some pride with that.
Okay. I love it. Before we just jump into Titan stuff, I'd love to just, again, you and I have never really spoken before, so just jumping right in. 15 years with the Chiefs organization. Was it Dorsey who brought you in? How did you wind up there, Mike?
It was actually Scott Pioli brought me in 2009.
Okay.
I had been working with Boston College for a couple of years, and then Scott brought me in 2009, and then Dorsey came in 13 with Andy and Veach, and so I was there. Total of 16 seasons there.
So Pioli, you and he crossed paths while he was with the Patriots. Would that be the DNA of that, Mike, or no?
Yeah, it's funny. It was at an Italian-American banquet that I actually met Scott.
Why not?
And my brother was actually interning for the Patriots at the time, so that's when I actually first made the connection with Scott. And he actually had a couple of roommates at Central Connecticut State from Everett, Mass. So there was some connections there.
How about that? And when you're referring to your brother, you mean the current linebackers coach in Dallas, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We're creating all this connective tissue. And, obviously you had a front row seat for the drafting of a generationally brilliant quarterback. And then, of course, the quick maturation of Patrick Mahomes. And I'm wondering what you saw there, witnessed there, was part of there that you're bringing to bear here with such a massive first selection for you as the general manager of the Tennessee Titans and Cam Ward. Mike?
The process was a little different there when I was in Kansas City because we were trying to keep it quiet. The interest that we had in Patrick. I think we were at pick 27. We ended up moving up to 10. So we did bring Patrick in for a visit on a 30 visit, but really we didn't we didn't want to have a lot of people at the pro day. We didn't do a private workout with them to really kind of keep it secret that, that we actually were going to move up for him. So the process here has been a little bit different where it was a lot more wide open for us. And, we were at the combine with him at his pro day. We did a private workout with him, brought him in on a 30 visit as well. So process was a little different just in terms of, Brian and his staff really meeting him and drilling down on the football intelligence piece was pretty similar to what we did in Kansas City when we brought Patrick in the building. But the whole process was a little bit different. And then, when we took Patrick that year too, we had Alex Smith, and there was a plan in place to sit him for a year. So there's a little bit of differences there in terms of just the evaluation period and maybe the plan moving forward. But some of the characteristics I saw when we scouted Patrick, I kind of mentioned some other interviews. Just, the arm talent obviously stands out with Cam. Some of the natural instincts and poise in the pocket that he has, and his ability to create outside the pocket. And then when you really got a chance to meet Cam, we were really impressed with just the person. Not only his football intellect, but, his leadership ability and everything that we went through the school and talked to the coaches there, Coach Cristobal. Actually, the first conversation I had was when I was at the East-West game when I first got hired. There was a guy, Eric Morris, there, who's the head coach of North Texas, and he was actually the OC for Patrick at Texas Tech. So it was a little bit of a connection there. And he was pretty short, and he's like, he's everything you want. he coached him in Incarnate Word and then took him to Washington State when he got hired there. But he just said, in terms of the leadership and the person, and then he continued to get better. This guy had 57 starts in college, played 5 years of college football. And I think every stop along the way, he got better.
Well, I mean, I couldn't tell you like Cam Ward by the fact that you brought about 90 people with you to the pro day, Mike, including the entire social media team. And I didn't think you were gaining content for other teams, to maybe trade the pick. It was obvious that he was your guy. And I just love hearing that you heard from, as you said, the connective tissue from his coach at Incarnate Word, brought him to Washington State, saying he's everything you're looking for. What is that you were looking for that you think Cam Ward checks those boxes, Mike?
Well, in terms of the talent, I mean, that was the big thing we went through the evaluation when we first got here. A lot of us had not met Cam before. But then when you watch them on tape, and we one of the first things I did when I got hired is to watch all these quarterbacks. And, we went back to Incarnate Word, to Washington State, to Miami, where he played this past season. And every year he got better as he went along. And then, we had not met him before. So the first time we actually sat down with him was at the Combine. And, you could just feel, his confidence there, his football intellect. He had great recall when we turned some film on from even past years, 5 years back to Incarnate Word. And there was a humility factor there to him too, because, one thing Brian did was he made a cut up of all his bad plays. Mm-hmm. And he had great recall in terms of, even 5 years back, this is what I did wrong here. I shouldn't have done this. So you saw a person that continued to get better and that was going to be coachable and that has all the, the talent you're looking for at that position.
And then what's a good story you wouldn't mind telling my listenership that you learned about Cam Ward while kicking tires around people that he knows, around people that he's come across or connects with, whether it's somebody who works in the locker room at one of these places or anybody from his high school, something that we don't know about Cam Ward that you learned of a good story that you wouldn't mind sharing from the process?
There was a lot of stories that we heard over the last few months. A really good story too from the Miami staff was when he first got there. His ability to kind of galvanize the team. So when he first got to Miami, his ability to connect and lead with the team. I guess there was a throwing session that they talked about that when he met with the players, and there was a receiver that was not there at the time, and he was working out with another NFL quarterback, and Cam kind of shot him a text back and said, "Well, I think you should be down here because that quarterback's not throwing you passes this year." Just his.
Okay.
His leadership ability. I mean, there's a lot of stories. The night that we actually, before the pro day, we had dinner with his family and his parents, who are great people, mm-hmm. And just learning about like his past. Like he's a good golfer, which I didn't know.
All right.
All these different little tidbits you pick up. But the most interesting stories were some of his leadership capabilities, and that one when he first got to Miami really stood out to me.
Well, so Mike Borgonzi, general manager of the Tennessee Titans, here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is your plan for Cam Ward then, Mike? We heard a little bit from Brian Callahan. I'd love to hear from you as the general manager. What is the plan for Cam Ward here?
I think, we're going to go in this thing and we're going to create competition here. We still have, quarterbacks in the room with Will here. And, our plan is really, he gets in here today with the rookies and just, we're going to take it step by step and see how he progresses. We've done some installs with him over Zoom, before, even before we had him here. So really it's just in terms of just like today and this weekend, it's just like getting in and out of the huddle, calling the play, spitting the play call out. I think it's important. I think Brian has a great plan with his staff, and, we're going to take it through the offseason, OTAs, and into training camp and just see how he progresses. But, I think the first thing is, he's really going to, pick up the playbook first, and then, start to build those relationships with the people in the locker room.
So, again, far be it from me or anybody in the media, Mike, to tell you how to plan your life or your team or to generally manage. And the same thing, obviously, of the head coach. And I understand your franchise does have a history of choosing a quarterback very high and and letting him sit. I've seen Steve McNair wear both of those helmets behind you in your office, just as a for instance. That said, when you in the 21st century choose a quarterback first overall and say we're going to compete, that maybe raises a little bit of anxiety and from the fan base, because normally you choose someone first overall. Last year, Chicago didn't say anything but Caleb's our guy. He's going to start. That's the way we're going to operate with him, and he's ready to roll. Why not do that with Cam?
Well, I think the expectation is him to, you taking a quarterback number 1 overall, that he's going to, uplift your franchise and be that guy. But, part of our job here is to manage expectations as we go through the process here. So, eventually that's what we want it to become. But I think, we really want to take the proper steps to make sure he's ready to go out there and play, whether it be week 1 or week 2 or week 3. And if he hits the ground running here in training camp, he'll be out there week 1.
So it is possible, based on just the you never know factor, that Will Levis could once again be the starting quarterback to start the season for the Tennessee Titans. Mike?
Well, I think that the competition brings out the best in everyone. So, I think Will's a young quarterback that's still developing. But anytime you take a quarterback, with the number 1 pick, your anticipation is that he's going to one day, lead the franchise and be a franchise quarterback. But, like I said, we've talked about this plan for a while with Brian and his staff, and, we want to make sure Cam is prepared before he steps out in that field. Mike
Borgonzi here on the Rich Eisen Show. Obviously, when you choose a quarterback first overall, the rest of the draft kind of gets lost. So let's put it up on the screen here. Pound the table for wherever you wish, or the whole thing. Go for it, Mike.
Well, I think collectively as a group, we wanted to bring in, I think we got some really talented guys here, but we wanted to really emphasize, the personal and football character, makeup traits of all these guys. And all these guys were leaders and really checked the box in terms of all, everything we look for and to being a Titan. We took Femi, in the second round here. He's a young guy that, he played actually middle linebacker, and then they moved to the edge the 4th game of the year. So he's got a lot of upside as a pass rusher. And then Kevin Winston we took here in the 3rd. Probably would have went a lot higher in the draft. He hadn't hurt his knee the 2nd game of the year, but he's recovering and he should be ready here for training camp. And then we took some skill guys here in the 4th and 5th with Chim and Gunner and Alec. Guys I think that can develop and help this offense and grow with the young quarterback. And then we took a few these guys in the later rounds with Jackson Slater. He's a guy that coming from an FCS school, got to see him at the Senior Bowl. He's going to have great value as a swing interior guy, plays guard and center. And then Marcus Harris was a guy that, had transferred a couple of times, but every year he got better, played his last year at Cal. And then my last guy I had to say for last is Kalel Mullings.
Oh, baby. I know him, Mike.
And he's a Boston guy, and I know he's a Michigan guy, so you love him too. So we were hoping that he'd be there. So, I was happy when I was able to make the phone call to him.
Oh, my gosh. Seriously, what he did for Michigan, certainly this last year. Certainly, honestly, without him, there was no victory over USC, period. Yeah. Sharon Moore running the ball on 3rd and a little bit longer than manageable in the horseshoe to try and get a first down, and then he broke their back. That's the sort of stuff, Mike. I love that pick for you, but I'm biased.
Yeah, I love him too. He's a Boston guy. And he's a Michigan guy, so he's a former linebacker that turned running back. So he's a big back that runs hard.
All right. So what do you tell your fan base about the expectation level before I let you go on your day here, Mike? What do you tell them?
Yeah, I think that, we still have a lot of work to do here on this roster, and it's never going to stop. Our job here is to create competition and create depth on the roster, and that, we want to win as soon as possible here. But we also realize that, we're going to have to build this thing up again. If we had the number 1 pick here, we don't want to be there again. But our expectation here is to gradually get better. And keep adding good players with good football character. And eventually I think we have a great group of, my staff is unbelievable here. I've added Dave Ziegler and Reggie McKenzie, both former GMs, and I get a chance to work with Chad Brinker here. So, I have a really good group here, and we're just going to continue to get better here.
Hey, man, nice to meet you. I would say good luck to your Celtics, but I'm a Knicks fan, so we'll just leave it at that. I imagine Will Levis is on board with your C's too. All you guys from Mass there,
He still carries 617 number 2.
Okay, yeah, you would know that for sure. And I guess before I let you go, one last crack at this one. Anything that you saw in Mahomes that you see in Cam Ward? Anything from the process? Anything that you saw there? And I understand it's an unfair comparison. I understand what I'm saying here. But all that said, you had a front row seat for somebody who has changed the fortunes for so many people. Anything that you saw in that process during the process of Cam Ward I've seen that before, Mike.
The one thing when I first started to watch him was the instinctual feel for the game. Some guys just have it. The pocket awareness, his ability to throw guys open, and sometimes see receivers when you don't even think they, come across the screen sometimes, and he's able to see it. So it's this instinctual feel that really jumped out to me that, if I was going to say anything that maybe compared him to Pat, I would say that.
Mike, thanks for the time. Let's connect again, and nice to have you on the program, and I appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, Rich. Great meeting you.
You got it. That's Mike Borgonzi, Tennessee Titans general manager, zooming in from Nashville. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.